August 14, 1984, Tokyo. A sealed parcel arrives at Keio University's medical department. Inside, a handwritten journal describing procedures that defy morality and biology. Subject remained conscious during extraction. One line reads, "But the name of the facility, missing, so is its location." And yet, whispers trace it to a place the Japanese Empire once erased from all official maps. A place where physicians in pristine white coats conducted experiments not even Nazi doctors attempted. What was Unit 731? Why was it protected, not prosecuted? And why, even now, are its archives still hidden? This is the story they buried. The truth, as we will uncover, was far more horrifying than even the darkest wartime rumors dared suggest. For those who refuse to look away, for the truth seekers, the skeptics, the ones who read between redacted lines, this channel is your refuge. If you walk with us through history's sealed corridors, subscribe now and stand among a growing fellowship of investigators. And as we begin this descent into one of the most hidden atrocities of the 20th century, tell us, what state are you listening from? But to understand the unspeakable, we must first return to the years before it began. Before the war, before the Empire's most brilliant minds turned scalpel against soul. In the early 1930s, as the world reeled from the aftershocks of the Great War, Japan surged with ambition. The Meiji Restoration had transformed the island nation into a modern industrial power. But its hunger for resources and influence remained insatiable. Manchuria, with its vast railways, mineral deposits, and relative lack of foreign resistance, became a target dressed in justification, protection, stabilization, regional harmony. In truth, it was conquest. In 1931, under the fabricated pretext of a railway sabotage, Japan seized control of the region and established the puppet state of Manchukuo. Officially, it was a bold stride toward peace. Unofficially, it was the beginning of a much darker calculus, one in which human lives were counted not in terms of citizens, but in variables. In Harbin, the coldest and most remote corner of Manchuria, a facility was constructed under the most stringent secrecy. Its official name was the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department of the Kwantung Army, but it would become infamous under a far simpler name, Unit 731. Even in its earliest days, strange rumors began to circulate among the locals, stories of strange howls echoing at night, of delivery trucks arriving with prisoners and leaving empty, of chimneys that smoked day and night but never seemed to produce anything. Children whispered that it was a place where the sun never rose. Adults said nothing. Fear is an excellent silencer. The men who built it, doctors, engineers, officers, believed they were pioneers. That Japan had been chosen, perhaps even fated, to lead a new age of biomedical supremacy. Disease would be weaponized, endurance tested, flesh studied as mechanism. They did not consider their subjects as human. Chinese peasants, Korean dissidents, Russian prisoners, and occasionally even Japanese criminals. The empire's undesirables were reclassified under a single term, maruta, meaning logs, just wood to be burned in the fire of scientific discovery. Their names were erased, their bodies opened, their agony recorded. There is no monument at the original site, no plaque, no apology, no official recognition from the Japanese government to this day. And yet, in dusty rooms and private collections, pages like those found in that anonymous journal keep surfacing. Each one a blade of truth, piercing through the layers of bureaucratic silence. What compels a man to record such horrors without flinching? What belief turns a healer into a torturer? These are the questions that echo from behind the sealed doors of Unit 731, and we have only just begun to open them. He was a man who, in another era, might have cured a generation. Instead, he carved it open. Sure, is she brilliant, magnetic, uncomfortably persuasive Rose, not through compassion, but through obsession. A trained surgeon with a mind sharpened by ambition and dark ingenuity. Ishii captivated his military superiors by promising not just medical advancement, but dominance. Where others saw germs, Ishii saw opportunity. Where others saw patients, he saw test subjects. In the rigid hierarchy of Imperial Japan, where obedience masked cruelty and nationalism veiled delusion, Ishii offered something irresistible, a vision of total control over the human body, its limits, its thresholds, its weaknesses, and he vowed to unlock those secrets no matter the cost. By 1936, his influence had grown formidable. Backed by high-ranking figures in the Kwantung Army, Ishii was granted funding, personnel, and, most critically, freedom. The official mandate: research epidemic prevention. The unspoken truth: perfect the mechanics of biological warfare through unrestricted human experimentation. The result was the sprawling complex near Pingfang, on the outskirts of Harbonan, isolated walled city of barracks, labs, incinerators, surgical theaters, and prison cells. To the outside world, it remained the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department. Inside, it was known simply as Unit 731, and beneath its sterile title, an empire of anatomical horror was being born. Its foundation rested on deception. Publicly, it trained doctors and engineers in the noble pursuit of disease control. Privately, it bred typhus, anthrax, and plague within its walls, testing their effects not on animals, but on men, women, and children. Recruited staff were told they were serving the nation. Most believed it. Some knew better and relished it. The culture of obedience within the Japanese Imperial Army ensured silence. Few questioned, none resisted. Orders were carried out with the precision of a scalpel. The compound operated with bureaucratic perfection. Incoming test subjects were registered with a serial number and stripped of identity. They were referred to as Maruta logs. The term served a dual purpose: euphemism and dehumanization. Logs don't scream. Logs don't beg. Logs burn when needed. The first of these so-called logs were Chinese peasants from surrounding villages, suspected rebels, and petty criminals. Then came political prisoners, Russian communists, Korean resistors. Some were homeless. Others were simply in the wrong place when the trucks arrived. They were told nothing. Many were blindfolded. All were disposable. Reports from recovered documents, though fragmented, paint a picture so grotesque it almost strains belief. Yet the handwriting, the stamps, the clinical phrasing confirm their authenticity. Prisoners were exposed to extreme cold until their limbs froze solid. Doctors then shattered their bones with hammers to measure internal frost damage. Others were tied down and infected with syphilis or cholera to observe transmission and organ failure. Vivisections were performed without anesthesia because anesthetics were said to interfere with data. Internal bleeding was monitored in real time. Lung capacity under duress. Eye movement under panic. Bowel rupture during stressor recorded with the same dispassion one might bring to testing a machine. The scientists asked, how much blood must be lost before death? How long can the stomach survive removal? Can a body function after liver extraction? These were not philosophical inquiries. They were measurable, repeatable trials. Dozens, hundreds, thousands, all kept in bound reports, sealed with red wax and hidden in the basements of military academies long after the war ended. And still the question lingers. Why did so many Maruta never leave the compound? Why did no smoke rise above the crematorium for days, then suddenly billow black for weeks? Why did Unit 731 order rail shipments of lime in volumes no agricultural station could explain? Those answers, too, are buried in silence, buried beneath the medals of men who returned home praised as patriots. Men like Sher Ishii, whose vision was fulfilled not through healing, but through ruin. In a war where ideology often disguised atrocity, he offered a new kind of horror: science without soul, progress measured in pain. Within the hidden walls of Unit 731, the boundary between scientific inquiry and human suffering was tragically blurred. Researchers conducted experiments that tested the limits of the human body under harsh conditions, often without regard for ethics or compassion. Frostbite studies exposed individuals to extreme cold to observe tissue damage and recovery, while other tests involved procedures performed without pain relief. Records describe moments where subjects appeared conscious even during invasive operations, highlighting the stark reality of the experiments. Infectious diseases such as cholera and plague were studied by exposing subjects to pathogens to understand their effects. These activities were documented meticulously, with little regard for the human cost. Central to this grim chapter was Sher Ishii, a military physician whose ambition framed war as a means to advance medical science. Ishii viewed the conflict as an opportunity to push the boundaries of knowledge, often at great human expense. His leadership shaped Unit 731 into a secretive institution where the pursuit of data often overshadowed ethical considerations. According to some accounts, Ishii believed that understanding the limits of the human body under extreme conditions was crucial for Japan's military success, reflecting a cold, utilitarian approach to science. As the war neared its end, attempts were made to erase the evidence of these activities. Laboratories were dismantled, documents destroyed, and the site itself was abandoned under hurried circumstances. Intriguingly, reports suggest that American intelligence personnel were present near the facility shortly before Soviet forces arrived, raising questions about what was known and possibly withheld by Western powers. The reasons behind such secrecy remain unclear, and many documents continue to be classified decades later, leaving a legacy of unanswered questions about the full extent of knowledge and complicity. These events remind us of the complex and often troubling relationship between scientific progress and ethics, especially in times of conflict. They challenge us to consider how easily moral boundaries can be crossed when ambition and ideology intertwine, and to remain vigilant in ensuring that history's darkest chapters are neither forgotten nor repeated. As Soviet troops surged across Manchuria in the final months of World War II, the walls of Unit 731 began to close in not with soldiers, but with smoke. The once impenetrable compound, a labyrinth of horror and science, became a hive of frantic activity. Men in white coats hurriedly dismantled equipment, burned documents by the cartload, and loaded crates onto trucks destined for unknown locations. The incinerators churned day and night, swallowing the traces of years of unimaginable suffering. No footage, no photographs survived, only fragments of charred paper and whispered rumors. The Soviets would soon uncover parts of the compound, but what they found was only a shadow of the full horror. The Japanese had ensured that the deepest secrets, the darkest corners, vanished in flames before the first boot crossed the threshold. But the war's end did not bring justice. While Nazi doctors faced tribunals in Nuremberg, the architects of Unit 731 slipped into shadows protected by political convenience. The United States, entering the post-war occupation of Japan, recognized a different kind of prize in the ashes: scientific data harvested through blood and pain. Operation Paperclip is infamous for smuggling Nazi scientists into American programs, but its Asian counterpart quiet, concealed, morally ambiguous granted immunity to the doctors and officers of Unit 731. In exchange, the US secured exclusive access to the gruesome research. Names that should have been etched in history as war criminals became consultants, advisors, or quietly retired men living out their days free from prosecution. The scientific gains from bacteriological warfare were whispered in military circles, never to be publicly acknowledged. When the International Military Tribunal for the Far East convened in 1946, many expected the architects of these atrocities to face justice. Yet, in an astonishing omission, no member of Unit 731 was indicted. The records were absent, the evidence conveniently lost or suppressed. The victors chose a selective memory, one that excluded the crimes committed behind barbed wire and sealed gates. Why? Was it pragmatism, cold calculation, or a deeper complicity in maintaining the fragile peace of the emerging Cold War? The silence speaks louder than any verdict. Truth, it seemed, was negotiable. Some truths were deemed too dangerous to reveal, too disruptive to the fragile geopolitical order being constructed from the ruins. Decades later, fragments of the past began to resurface. Among the most haunting relics was a sealed journal delivered anonymously in 1984 to a university in Tokyo. Its pages revealed the intimate horrors and whispered betrayals of those who lived through Unit 731's shadow. One chilling line stands out. They told us it would save lives. They said we were the scalpel of peace. But we only learned how deep flesh goes. This sentence encapsulates the bitter irony of their mission, promised as a service to humanity, twisted into a descent into cruelty so profound it defies comprehension. The words offer a final challenge, a call to confront not only history, but the uncomfortable truths about science, morality, and power. As the embers of these stories glow faintly in the archives and memories of survivors, the question remains: what price was paid for this silence? And who ultimately decided which horrors would be buried and which would be told? The scars left behind are not just on flesh, but on the conscience of history itself. Decades have passed since the last screams echoed through the sterile halls of Unit 731, but the shadows of that place refuse to fade. Survivors, their voices often silenced by fear or shame, have slowly emerged activists, historians, and families, seeking fragments of truth long denied. Officially, Japanese authorities have persistently denied the existence of many records, dismissing claims as exaggeration or propaganda. Yet the truth seeps out, like blood through cracked stone. Hidden letters discovered in private collections. Skeletal remains unearthed from unmarked graves. Fragments of official reports smuggled into public light. Each piece is a whisper from the past, demanding recognition, demanding remembrance. Questions linger as stubborn ghosts. Were the experiments truly halted when the war ended, or did they morph into new covert programs under different names? Why do vast troves of documents remain sealed within US government archives, their contents hidden from public scrutiny nearly 80 years later? Why do certain burial sites, suspected to hold the remains of victims, remain unmarked, shrouded in secrecy, as if erasing a history too terrible to confront? These unanswered questions form a web of silence, woven tightly by bureaucracies and geopolitical convenience. It is as if the past is locked behind a veil, accessible only to those who dare pry with relentless persistence. At the heart of this dark legacy lies a profound and unsettling philosophical reflection on the nature of science and morality. Science, when unbound by ethics, becomes a weapon not just of knowledge, but of profound cruelty. The laboratory becomes a stage where civility is a mask, easily discarded when utility demands it. Behind the veneer of progress hides a monstrous capacity for harm, camouflaged beneath the sterile precision of data and experimentation. It asks us, how easily can the truth be buried beneath layers of bureaucracy, hidden behind classifications, excuses, and political agendas? How often does the promise of advancement blind us to the human cost? The story of Unit 731 is a cautionary tale, one that warns how quickly the line between healer and torturer can be erased when ambition overrides conscience. Now, as this narrative draws to a close, a final challenge is extended to you, the viewer. Would you recognize evil if it wore a lab coat? Would you confront it if history sought to hide it from you? These questions are not rhetorical. They demand your reflection. The past is not just a story to be told, but a mirror to examine ourselves. The shadows of Unit 731 stretch far beyond its physical borders, touching the very way we understand truth, justice, and humanity. Before we part, I invite you to engage, share your thoughts, your theories, and your own stories of hidden histories. What country are you watching from? What other dark tales lie buried in the forgotten archives of our world? Like, subscribe, and join this community of seekers who dare to illuminate the darkest corners of history. The truth waits patiently for the bravest souls to uncover it.